Hello dear students, welcome to the last session of your environment rapid revision series, and here, as I had promised, is the discussion of all the current affairs that's important for you from the exam point of view. So it's going to be quite a tight-packed session if you have not looked through your current affairs. So I'll advise two things. Those who have their current affair notes of environment and who've already done a revision, or at least if you've had the current affair notes, sit with the notes for this session, okay? And if you've mentioned any of this, because at least one round before you start this session, what you can do is at least one round, just go through all the current affairs that you've just compiled in your notes or something, so that you know what is where, and if I'm discussing something relevant that's there in your notes, you can just add the points. Those who don't have any current affairs, so this is a very fresh session for you, so you are going to maybe have some loose bits here and there, so just go about, keep a note of it so that you can keep revising it towards the exam, and most of the important details will be covered also, so don't worry about it. So it's going to be tight-packed. Take requisite breaks in between and watch the session. Coming to the response for the other two sessions which were there, I've gone through all your comments and I was mighty pleased to tell you that you guys have followed the different levels out there. Okay, I hope already the PDF of the PPTs and everything are shared with you and you are revising accordingly. So without much delay, let's go into the environment current affairs, and this is covering current affairs from your Jan, and even if there's anything prior to that, I have tried including it there, Jan to your March. So it's a compilation of all of these things. Okay, so and again the sessions are going in different categories. The first category, as you're going to see right now, is different species and protected areas. After the different species and protected areas, we have a category for the different organizations, programs, etc. So that you know all of these things are just compiled together. Those who are interested while sitting for these sessions, what you can do is you would have species and protected areas getting mixed up, you know, because in several contexts the protected area would be discussed in the context of a species or something. You can actually make separate lists of maybe a sheet of paper for all the species that we're discussing and a sheet of paper for all the protected areas we are discussing, so that you can keep it separate also, whatever works for you. So let's start the session. The first thing that we have to discuss is about a species called as your seahorses. Okay, so seahorses have the scientific name Hippocampus kelloggii, and seahorses was there in this year's news primarily because they have seen, or there's a migration trend towards the eastern coast of India, specifically in the Odisha coast. And some features about the seahorse is its status is vulnerable. It has, or it belongs to CITES Appendix 2. That means what? The trade of this species can happen based on certain import-export license. So the trade is not completely banned is what you have to keep in mind, because it's in CITES Appendix 2. In India, if you look at it, seahorses are generally all around the world. When you look at it, it's found in shallow tropical waters and temperate salt water throughout the world, and primarily from 45 degrees south to 45 degrees north. So it's a tropical species. Next important thing is its homes or its habitats are seagrass beds, estuaries, coral reefs, mangroves. So again, the pointer is seahorse population can decline if any of these things are also declining. If seagrass, mangroves, coral reefs are dying off, even the seahorse population will decline because it's a loss of habitat. Next important thing is in India, it's not just Odisha that is, it comes as important, or, it comes as a habitat area. You have areas from Gujarat to Odisha. That means almost Gujarat is there. There is Maharashtra. You have the areas of Tamil Nadu. You have areas of Andhra and Odisha where you see the presence of seahorses. So 5 states in India, along with certain island groups of Andaman and Lakshadweep, see the presence of seahorses. So this is a first species to be discussed. Next species are about the crocodile population in India, the crocodile species in India. Primarily, India houses three major types of crocodile species, which is your gharial, the mugger, and the saltwater crocodile. So keep this in mind. These are the three major crocodile species in India, and it differs also. First thing, let's talk about gharial, which is quite important. Gharial is actually also known as the gavial or the fish-eating crocodile, and it is the longest among the living crocodiles. Primarily, gharials are seen in the freshwaters of Himalayan rivers, Chambal River in the Vindhya range. It used to be there in your Bangladesh, Bhutan area, but now it's extinct. Right now, it's listed under the critically endangered species of IUCN. So, the gharial, which is in India, Himalayan freshwaters, even I have told you this, even the BS river, in all of these rivers, you do see your gharial. But in the Vindhyan range, it's in your Chambal River. The next species which is there in India, that you see in India, is something called as your saltwater crocodile. It's the Earth's largest living crocodile species. It's also called as a man-eater species. The habitat of this primarily occurs in brackish and freshwater regions of eastern India, Southeast Asia, etc. You see it in Sundarbans, Andaman, Nicobar Islands, in all of these areas. In India, it's when you look at the population also, it's much good in the numbers that are there, and you will see that it's only the least concern under IUCN. Okay. The next kind that we have in India is your mugger crocodile. The mugger crocodile is otherwise called as a marsh crocodile, thereby indicating the fact that it is present in those delta regions which are there. You see mugger in your eastern side of India. You see it in all of those deltaic regions in Godavari, in your Sundarban region. In all of those areas, you do see your mugger species. You see it in the freshwater of Indian subcontinents. Used to be there in Bhutan and Myanmar, but it's extinct, and IUCN has listed it as vulnerable. Okay, so the crocodile species in India are only these three. Just keep that in mind, and all of them have different statuses, from gharial being critically endangered to mugger being vulnerable to your saltwater crocodile being of least concern. Moving forward to the next species over here, again, moving forward to discussing a little bit more about mugger, because mugger was in news again extensively this year. The mugger crocodiles are considered as apex predators. Okay, that means they would come at the end of a food chain. They're primarily carnivorous. They eat fish, frogs, crustaceans, insects, mammals, birds, sometimes even monkeys, squirrels, or even dead animals. Okay, now again, mugger was in news because I told you do see it in the eastern belts, and the Moyar River, which is there in Tamil Nadu, is the home to one of the largest population of the mugger crocodile. Okay, so that is the context in which it was there in the news. Moving forward, we have to discuss about a species called as Mulethi. Okay, Mulethi was in news because you can get a very important commercial product called as licorice from this. Okay, licorice is actually, so this Mulethi is, sometimes it's called in very synonymous way, because Mulethi is actually, it's a kind of a shrub-like plant. You get the barks of this, the small stems of this, which is used for different purposes. There is commercial importance for this species, and this was there in news this time. Let's look at what was the reason for the news and what is the species. So primarily Mulethi or licorice, if they give you licorice also, understand it's related to this. It's a perennial shrub having sweet roots due to the presence of glycyrrhizin, which is 50 times sweeter than sucrose. Okay, so the roots of this plant have a very high presence of glycyrrhizin, making it extremely sweet, and you can use these roots and you can create sweeteners in herbal medicines, flavoring of candies, flavoring of tobaccos, etc. You can use it for sweetening purpose. Apart from that, licorice is also used in traditional medicines for treating chest and lung diseases, pneumonia, bronchitis, kidney diseases, coughs, low blood sugar, liver toxicity, pancreatic disorders. It's used in all of these, creating medicines for all of these disorders also. So this is the background of it. The current affair of it was, very recently we're giving a lot of push for the commercial cultivation of licorice, and it has now been started by the CSIR, I hope you know what CSIR is, and the Institute of Himalayan Bioresource Technology at Palampur. Both of them have come together and they have now started the commercial cultivation of mulethi, and this is the reason why it was there in news. So perennial shrub, roots of the plant, all of these uses, and then the current affairs. I hope that is clear. Moving forward, there was a news where there's going to be the DNA profiling of elephants. Even when you look at science and tech, there's a lot of DNA profiling related articles that have come this time. Anyway, let's look at this. This DNA profiling of elephants is happening as part of the Project Elephant, and it's the process where a specific DNA pattern is obtained from the sample of the bodily tissue, and what happens is all the major details of that particular elephant or the genetic details of that particular elephant will be coded or will be created into a specific, it will be like, it's having an Aadhaar card sort of a thing. So this DNA profiling will act like an Aadhaar card of what elephants, and this is the catch over here. This DNA profiling of elephants is happening only for captive elephants, not for wild elephants. So the elephants that are there in the wild, they do not come under this. It's the ones that are there as captive, so that any research, any diseases that are affecting them, all of these can be studied in detail. Again, to do this, the forest officials have created something called as your Gaj Suchna app. So the Gaj Suchna app does the DNA profiling of your captive elephants, the ones that are there in zoos, the ones that are there in different ownerships, etc. Moving forward, we have to talk about seaweeds. Seaweeds have been in news quite recurrently in the last 1 year. Understand, the two news. One, we've created a seaweed mission, so that one reason it was there in news. Then India has its first seaweed park coming up. So again, that is also the second reason. So seaweed is primarily important. Now, what exactly is the mission or the seaweed mission? The seaweed mission is something that has been launched by TIFAC. TIFAC is your Technology Information Forecasting and Assessment Council. Okay, so the idea is in what all systems or what all areas we can use seaweed. They will forecast it, they will look at it, and then they have created this mission called as your seaweed mission. TIFAC is a body that comes under the Department of Science and Tech. It's important because I know we're discussing this under environment, but the species or this mission is actually launched by your science, Ministry of Department of Science and Technology. Why have we launched this mission? Understand that globally you have a seaweed production of almost 32 million tons. Okay, China produces 57% of it, followed by Indonesia and South Korea. India is a country that has the natural ocean resources to engage in seaweed cultivation, but still we have not forecasted or we have not entered into that market. So using the seaweed mission, we are now planning to enter into, and India's share right now in seaweed production is actually a mere 0.01, 0.02%, which is there, which means we now can push it even further. That is why we are now launching the seaweed mission. So since now we are going to be involved in the seaweed cultivation, let's have a quick science or biological information about this species. Seaweeds can be microscopic or macroscopic in nature. Okay, that means extremely tiny species like your phytoplanktons belong to the category of seaweeds. Large species like your kelp, that also comes under your seaweed category. If you look in India, India has almost 840 identified species of seaweed. It includes your brown, red, green algae, etc. Brown algae, red algae, green algae, etc. Very abundantly, if you look at it, along your Gujarat coast and your Tamil Nadu coast, you do see the presence of seaweed extensively, and then you do see it in Andaman and your Lakshadweep also. Okay, so this is something. And what are the benefits of it? See, when you look into the benefits of it, the seaweed is actually used as, because it's so abundant in vitamins and minerals. Certain southeastern communities like your Japanese community and your Chinese and everything, they extensively use seaweed as part of their nutrition. So it can be used for nutrition, it can be used for certain biofuel production, it can be used in the habitat protection of areas, etc. So the widespread use, it's been said that almost 80% of the dissolved oxygen process that is happening in the oceans are done by or that oxygen cycle and the carbon dioxide cycle is primarily owed to your seaweed population, which is there in oceans. So they are on the whole very important for the ecology and habitat. Now it's in the same context that we have now started a seaweed park, India's first fisheries aqua park in the form of a multi-purpose seaweed park. And where has it come? It has come in Tamil Nadu. Okay, and also understand here, this was initially, it came about in the 2021 budget, and now we've actually put it into practice. It's to promote the seaweed cultivation in 136 coastal fishing villages in 6 districts of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is very famous for the seaweed, the acquiring of seaweed and even the cultivation. In certain areas of the Pamban village, seaweed, going for seaweeds, cultivating seaweeds, going and capturing seaweeds is actually even part of certain rituals of theirs. Okay, so just keep seaweed is important in all of these contexts. The next thing that we have to discuss is a protected area. I think this would be probably the first protected area that we are discussing. The Pangolakha Wildlife Sanctuary. See, just I would say from now onwards, just keep a separate sheet for your wildlife sanctuaries. At the end of the session, just tell me how many wildlife sanctuary or how many protected areas you managed to list down. Okay, because I'll see your comments and everything. So that can be a sort of a thing that you keep track of, because I know how many things I have put. I just want you to go through and see if you've not missed anything. So Pangolakha Wildlife Sanctuary is important because it was there in news. Beyond which, what has also happened is it is occurring at the tri-junction of Sikkim, Bhutan and West Bengal, and this is something that is important. That, you know, the tri-junction related questions have come in the past, so remember this. It is actually it's somewhere in the eastern area. It separates Sikkim from Bhutan, but when you look at it in the map, you will see that it occurs at the tri-junction of Sikkim and West Bengal from the Indian side, and then you have Bhutan also. So Pangolakha Wildlife Sanctuary. Another species that we have to discuss is your Leith's soft shell turtle. We will again come back to this when we have, because I'll be talking about the turtles in India also. But right now, keep this in mind. Even out of all the turtles in India, this is a species that is important this year from the size perspective also. Leith's soft shell turtle is primarily found in the Kaveri river between your Meghadattu, Hokkanagal in Tamil Nadu. It's endemic to peninsular India. Okay, endemic to peninsular India means it will occur only in your peninsular India. It can be found in the rivers of Tungabhadra, Ghatprabha, Bhavani, Godavari, Krishna, Chalakudi, which is a river in Kerala, Kaveri and Moya rivers. It's a critically endangered species. Okay, so all of this contributes. The reason why I told you it's also important is because India is now pushing forward to put the Leith soft shell turtles as part of the Appendix 1 of CITES. So India is lobbying for it, and that is the reason why it was there in news. Moving forward, this is a very one of those exotic species sort of a thing. This name of the species is Royan Ali. Okay, Royan Ali is actually a mushroom species. It's an edible mushroom. That means it's not poisonous or anything to human health. It's edible mushroom, and it grows on the termite hills in the forested areas of Western Ghats in Goa. In the Western Ghats, so specific, it's in the Western Ghat region, in the part of Goa which is there. Why is it important? It's so important because this fungal species, I have told you even this before, where the fungal species has the ability to go on, absorb nutrients, etc. from the soil. Now, this Royan Ali is a powerful biodegrading fungi. It converts almost 50% of the dead material on the ground into rich soil. Okay, so that is one very important thing. It's biodegrading like most of the other fungal species. The next important thing is the catch. Very recently, scientists discovered that you could create gold nanoparticles from this mushroom species, and that, my friends, is the reason why it is featured in our list which is there. Okay, so Royan Ali, mushroom species in the Western Ghat regions of Goa, and gold nanoparticles were synthesized from it. Next thing that I want to discuss with you, primarily because, again, just like seaweed, if I had to mention a group of species that's important, the next thing is orchids. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Orchids occur in tropical rainforest, mountains, and even deserts. Okay, don't think that, when you go to the flower shop and they'll tell you, no, you cannot, the orchid needs so much of protection. Don't think it doesn't grow in desert region or anything. It grows in desert also. In India has over 1,200 species of orchids, out of which 388 are just endemic to India. Okay, we don't find it anywhere else, and out of the 388, 128 are endemic to the Western Ghats. So if I had to tell you, the Western Ghats has close to 388, the half of it would be somewhere around 190 something. So you have less than half of all the orchids in India occurs in the endemic orchids in India, not all orchids, endemic orchids in India occur in your Western Ghats. Now, if you look at the total population of orchids, you will see the numbers are highest in Arunachal Pradesh, followed by Sikkim, and then West Bengal. So it's the northeastern side which is very high in its population. And now when you look at the different types of orchids that grow in India, popularly, if you look at the orchid population, there are three types of orchids. Something called as epiphytic orchids. Then you have terrestrial orchids, and then myco-heterotrophic orchids. Okay, again, from that categorization, when you look at it, 60% of the orchids found in India are epiphytic. So what is epiphytic? Epiphytic are those orchids which grow on another plant, including rock surfaces for physical support, drawing moisture and nutrients from the air and not from the host. Means what? They just grow on the other plant for a support sort of a thing because they are too weak, but they don't derive nutrients and everything. It's not a parasitic thing. It's epiphytic. It means that it will be growing for support, but the nutrients and the water content and everything, you get it from your air and not from the host. That's epiphytic. And epiphytic is the most common type of orchids which are there, and 60% of the orchids found in India are epiphytic. The next category is terrestrial, which means it's quite obvious. It grows on land and climbers, and it's found largely in temperate and alpine regions. So which means again in India, maybe when you go through the Himalayan areas and all, you will find terrestrial, but not in your tropical areas. Okay. Finally, you have another category called as mycoheterotrophic, which means they derive nutrients from mycorrhizal fungi attached to the roots of a plant. I have mentioned this to you. Mycorrhiza is actually the fungi or smaller organisms that occur in the roots of certain plants. So the root has mycorrhiza fungi. Now from the mycorrhiza fungi, the orchid get its food. That is called as your mycoheterotrophic. Okay. So again, these are the three categories. So I do feel like, you know, when we are talking about your orchids, all of these smaller details will be important. So you do understand these are flowering plants which can occur in all of these areas. Just I hope all the details necessary for it has been given. Another species which was important in news this time was the Nicobar pigeons. Those who attended my science and tech PEP classes would have heard about, would have gone and looked about this, wherein I told you this. There has been, from the science and tech point of view also, there has been so much of research done to bring back certain extinct species. Okay, so one such species that they've been doing a lot of research on is your dodo. Okay, dodo is a bird which has been extinct. It could not fly. It has been extinct, and now using certain genetic specimens, you looking at the the successors of the dodo, the scientists are trying to create the genetic the sequence of what the dodo could have been. Okay, and they're trying to recreate it like that. So now in that context, they came and hit upon the Nicobar pigeons. So again, understand, Nicobar pigeons, obviously it occurs in the Nicobar area, and it is the only living cousin of extinct birds like the dodo, the Rodriguez solitaire of Madagascar, and the spotted green pigeon of Pacific Islands. All of these three species are extinct, and the Nicobar pigeon happens to be the current living relative of all of these extinct species, and that is why it was there in news. So just a small pointer. Moving forward, there was a discovery of black tigers. Black tigers are only found in India's Simlipal Tiger Reserve in Odisha. Again, is black tiger a new genetic species or anything? No. What has happened is it has undergone a feature called as pseudomelanism, where the stripes have completely the yellow part of it, or the lighter pale part of it has completely faded out, and it has become grayish and dark in color, and this is why it seems like black tiger. So it's just a mutation that has happened in your normal tiger species, and you see it is only found in India's Simlipal Tiger Reserve. Okay, so that is what that was there in news. The next species that we have to discuss is about the Eurasian otter. The Eurasian otter is a semi-aquatic carnivorous mammal that is native to Eurasia. I hope you understand. Eurasia means we are talking about the Eurasian otter, or Eurasia primarily is in those transition areas between Europe, Asia region. You do not see much of that population coming over here, and that is exactly the reason why this is current affairs. Why? Because very recently the Eurasian otter was discovered for the very first time in the Chinnar Wildlife Sanctuary in Kerala. So this is the reason why it came in news. They are shy, nocturnal animals that are distributed in Europe, Asia and Africa. IUCN lists it as near threatened, so it's not a huge, it's not very risky, or in the population is not at a risk or anything, but the very finding of it is something of amusement. So it is there in the Chinnar Wildlife Sanctuary of Kerala. The next site, the protected area that we have to discuss, is your Kudremukh National Park, which occurs in Karnataka. Kudremukh was in news because Kudremukh has the single largest contiguous population of the lion-tailed macaque in the world. Okay, lion-tailed macaque is a type of ape species, a monkey species which is there, and the largest contiguous population in the sense that they have a group. It's not sparsely located. Throughout your Kudremukh National Park, you have the lion-tailed macaque, and it's the largest continuous such species or continuous such population occurring in such a way, and that is why it was there in news. Apart from that, quite some other details about Kudremukh. Kudremukh National Park actually used to serve as a landmark for sailors on the western coast for over 2000 years. So seeing the lights of Kudremukh, it used to be sort of a signaling area for the sailors in that area. And Kudremukh also is the least disturbed, low altitude, wet evergreen forest, and it also has the Shola grassland biome because of all of these features. Now, this was not in one news, it was there in several news articles that have come. So, on the whole, Kudremukh is important. The location of Kudremukh is important because of these reasons. The next species that I have to discuss with you guys is about the Himalayan vulture. The Himalayan vulture is a near threatened species, and very recently what has happened is the captive breeding of the Himalayan vulture has started. So you see the Himalayan vulture obviously in the Himalayan region, and it's one of the only two large old world vultures. Old world vultures means the ones that have old world vultures are those species that used to occur in Europe, Asia and Africa. Okay, so technically, geologically, they are the ones that would have been much earlier, and the Himalayan vulture happens to be one of the two largest old world vultures. In total now in India, including this one which is in the Himalayan region, we have started the captive breeding. In total there are 9 vulture conservation and breeding centers, and out of which the 3 are directly administered by the Bombay Natural History Society. Again, Bombay Natural History Society was previously asked in UPSC. I want you to understand so these vulture conservation and breeding centers are not entirely managed by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. 3 of them are managed by the Bombay Natural History Society, which is an autonomous organization, and it is something of, it's not a government body or anything. Okay, so keep that in mind. No discussion of environment is complete without the tiger. But we are not going to go into the life story and life history of the tiger. I just wanted to give few details about the tiger census that has happened very recently. You do know that the tiger census in India happens once in 4 years. The last year it happened was in 2018, which means in 2022 there was another census, and that all of those learnings are important for us this year also. So as of now, based on the tiger census, the highest number of tigers by state, when you look at it, it is in Madhya Pradesh. It has 785 tigers. This is a 50% increase from 2018, where the state had 526 tigers. Overall, India has recorded an increase of 12.6% increase in its tiger population, and right now we have an average total of 3346 tigers. Now I want you to understand the numbers of the tiger census. They show the highest numbers, the lowest numbers and the average numbers. So when you get a question, look at what they've asked clearly, and most of the time they will ask the average numbers which are there, because the highest and the lowest are the best case and the worst case scenario. The average is the number that we can use for study purposes, and that is what will be asked as questions also. Okay, so in total 785 in Madhya Pradesh, and in total in the sense state wise when you look at it, Madhya Pradesh is the highest, and overall 12.6% increase, and 3346 is the number of tigers currently. The Nilgiri tahr is a very important species for this year, because let me tell you, all throughout the year when we observe the current affairs, some or the other thing has come about with respect to Nilgiri tahr. So let's have a quick look at it. Nilgiri tahr is like a deer species. It's the only mountain ungulate. Ungulate means it has a specific kind of feet structure that will equip it to just climb onto the rocks. If you've seen the video of a Nilgiri tahr, they don't climb on the rocks like, in a normal manner which is there. They quickly jump onto the different rocks. They can do it because their feet are designed in this manner. The Nilgiri tahr is the only mountain ungulate in southern India amongst the 12 species present all over in India, and that is also the reason why it is considered as the state animal of Tamil Nadu. Kerala and Tamil Nadu records a very large amount of the Nilgiri tahr population. And in that entire stretch of Western Ghats also you do find scattered population, but Kerala has, in that Western Ghat area, Kerala has the highest number of Nilgiri tahr, and overall when you look at it, Tamil Nadu has the highest numbers also. It's an endangered species. So on several counts it was important. One thing, because of all of its features, the endangered status. The second thing is, there is now a synchronized counting of Nilgiri tahr going to happen in India. It's for the very first time that a synchronized counting is happening. Synchronized counting means just like you have a census sort of a thing, they are now going to count the species or count the Nilgiri tahrs in Kerala and Tamil Nadu to get a rough idea about the number of Nilgiri tahrs present. So it's for the first time such a counting is happening, and this is the reason why it is important. Okay. And this is a species I have put in over here just so that, just like last year's marsupials, if you ever get a question, I don't want you to be out in the dark. There's a lot of discussion going about with respect to giraffe. Globally, when you look at it, the different kinds of giraffe that occurs belongs to either the vulnerable category or the critically endangered category. So there's a lot of missions being taken up to protect the giraffe population. It primarily occurs in semi-arid savanna and savanna woodlands in Africa. Savanna, you understand, these are your tropical grasslands. So you have such locality that is needed for the giraffe population. Now I want you to understand, it does not occur naturally in the Indian wild regions. In any giraffe population that we have in India is a part of your captive breeding which is there. The British had tried to introduce giraffe into Indian land, but it was not successful. So right now we do not have naturally occurring populations of giraffe. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now again, red sanders, obviously there's a lot of hype about red sanders every year. Again, this year also one current affair associated with it is, red sanders, as you know, is a type of sandalwood species that is endemic to few areas in Andhra Pradesh. Very recently what has happened is, India has been, because there's a lot of illegal trade of red sandalwood that happens, and India has been trying to upgrade its status in CITES. Very recently that turned successful, and now the species is listed under the Appendix 2 of your CITES. Okay, so what happens is, it was there from 1994. We've been trying to curb this. The next thing that we have to discuss about the sloth bear. Again, the sloth bear was in news. The sloth bear is a omnivorous, that means it can eat both your plants and your animal species, as in your ant and everything like that. It's a mammal that can live up to 40 years. They are the only bears to routinely carry their young on their backs. Okay, the native region of sloth bear is India, Sri Lanka and Nepal. And you will observe over here, IUCN categorizes it as vulnerable, and in your CITES also it comes under Appendix 1. So again, just these things that I'm discussing, the reason why it was there in news would have been several. but for you just to have an like look into it, the diet of it, the nature of it, any specific features of it. That is why we are discussing this in a go. Then the next species that I want to discuss with you was the white-cheeked macaque. White-cheeked macaque is a species that is found in your Tibet and then only in Arunachal Pradesh in your northeastern India. IUCN lists this as endangered, and this is the catch over here. Normally for all the important species where IUCN there is the listing of endangered and critically endangered, it will be part of the Wildlife Protection Act. So we imply that it will be in the first schedule of the Wildlife Protection Act. But here the white-cheeked macaque is not covered by the Wildlife Protection of India, Protection Act of India. The reason being that there's no considerable idea about how many numbers of this is occurring in India. Because if we do not have that many numbers, then we do not list it under our schedule. So there's not been enough counting done as to how many are there. This is the reason why it is not listed under the Wildlife Protection Act of India. But globally, it belongs to an endangered category species. The next thing I want to discuss with you is a species this is not technically a species, but it's actually a fruit. Okay, it's the fruit of a deciduous tree, and it's otherwise also called as this haymang is otherwise also called as your Chinese sumac. Okay, so it's a fruit, and this fruit was in news because in India, obviously, you have the occurrence of it in Manipur and other northeastern regions, and here in this area, it's packed with this specific fruit is packed with such good features. It has so many nutrients, polyphenols, flavonoids, antioxidants, etc. And very recently, there was also information that said that the compounds that are isolated from the stem of the haymang tree can significantly suppress HIV virus in vitro. In vitro means in the lab when they tested, it was happening. So this is the reason why it was there in news. So I want you to understand haymang tree is a deciduous tree. Haymang is actually the fruit of it, otherwise called as the Chinese sumac. It's there in Manipur and other northeastern regions, and the quality of it. The reason why it was there in news is because of this anti-HIV feature of it. Another species that was there in news was your pygmy hog. Pygmy hog is a very small rat. It looks like a rat, but actually when you look at the taxonomic classification of it, it is a wild pig. Okay, it's the smallest and the rarest wild pig in the world. It's a critically endangered species. It likes to grow, or its habitat is your undisturbed patches of grassland. In India, you primarily find it in the northern West Bengal and the northwestern Assam region. It's one of the very few mammals that builds its own home or nest, complete with a roof, etc. So it is actually much when it comes to its habitat, when it comes to its area of living, it's a much more advanced species because it creates that very isolated area. And beyond all, pygmy hog is an indicator species. So as I told you, it occurs in undisturbed patches of grassland. So any kind of pollution, any kind of degradation in grasslands, pygmy hog populations are affected, and thereby it is an indicator species of this specific feature. So keep that in mind. Another species that I would like to discuss with you is fish mint. Okay, so fish mint is a herb which has a fish-like taste and smell. Okay, so it has the smell and the taste of fish, and it has so many other health benefits also. In India, it's known by different names. In Meghalaya, it's called as Ja Mardo. In Manipur, it's called as Tokning Kok. And in Assam, it's called as Masunduri. What happens is, in very recently, because after your SARS, your COVID-19, a lot of discussion, a lot of research has been happening into any kind of nutraceuticals that can cause or that can give you some kind of immunity against your SARS-CoV like viruses. So nutraceuticals means it can be your normal pills or anything, but it will have nutrition and it will have some kind of, it will do the effect of the drug and it will do the effect of the nutritional quality also. So here what has happened is the fish mint, which is popular right now, is known to be a potential nutraceutical agent for the therapy of viruses like SARS-CoV, HIV, herpes, influenza, etc. And in India, it occurs widely and it's quite common in certain cuisines also. So this is the reason why we have these names also mentioned. Now, this is a counterintuitive sort of a current affair. That's why I've put this over here. There is a species of tree. It's a flowering tree called as Conocarpus. Okay, so it's a flowering tree and it's a mangrove species. So normally we are all up for mangrove species, cultivation of it, etc. But very recently, Gujarat government has banned the cultivation of Conocarpus. Okay, why? Because Conocarpus is not an indigenous species. It's an exotic species that primarily occurs in parts of North and South America and Africa. So you maybe through the shipping industry or something, what has happened is it has come to your Indian side, and here they're growing so abundantly that the coasts of Gujarat and the habitation of different trees over there are getting affected. So what has happened right now is Gujarat has banned the planting of this Conocarpus tree in forest or non-forest area, citing its adverse impacts. The reason I mention this to you, because if it comes in UPSC, you will be like, banning of a mangrove species, why would they even do that? Because mangrove is something we are planning the cultivation of. But here it has happened in this manner and we have banned it. So keep that pointer in mind. The next species I want to discuss with you is a honeybee species. It's called as Apis mellifera. When you hear the word Apis, understand it belongs to your honeybee family. Now, the reason I want to discuss this is not because of the species, but a certain word that is involved over here. Apis mellifera is known as an effective biomonitor for determining the spread of antimicrobial resistance in urban neighborhoods. Okay, so they're doing something over here. So what exactly is this biomonitoring? Okay, biomonitoring is a tool for measuring biodiversity and pollution through the analysis of pollen collected by the bees. And this bees, normally we would say, the bees are bioindicators, etc. So how is it indicating it? So based on the pollen collected, you can see what are the other bacterial agents present, and this is what is called as biomonitoring. So I just wanted you to be introduced to that word, biomonitoring. The next area that we have to discuss is your Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. After the Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary, which was, or the national park, which became the home of the cheetahs from Namibia, Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary is now chosen as the second home of cheetahs. Again, it is occurring in Madhya Pradesh. The vegetation of this wildlife sanctuary is such that it has tropical dry deciduous forest, tropical dry mixed deciduous forest, and dry deciduous scrub. So generally you can look over here, this is an area with much lesser rainfall and it has deciduous forest there. The important point is the river Chambal flows through the sanctuary, dividing it into two parts. So this is going to be like a much more better area to look at because you have the river and you have the surrounding population, which will be good to feed or to be as prey for these cheetah populations. So this is the reason why this was chosen as the second home of the cheetah population. The next area that we have to discuss is your Padmaja Naidu Zoological Park. The Padmaja Naidu Zoological Park was last year it was there in news because it was involved in red panda relocation. Because the population of red pandas were dwindling, some of them were captured and put under captive breeding in Padmaja Naidu Zoological Park. Here you will also see this year it was there in news. Why? Because the World Association for Zoos and Aquariums has recently announced that it has the world's largest number of snow leopards in captivity. Largest number of snow leopards in captivity. That is the first thing. Second thing is it is also the largest high altitude zoo in the country. Because of both of these reasons, it was there in news. The next species that we have to discuss is your Singchung Bugun. Singchung Bugun is an area in Arunachal Pradesh, and this protected area was established in 2017. It is the home of the critically endangered species, which is the Bugun leochila, and it is named after the tribe which is over there. So you can see this bird. And in at least 4 years back, the area over here, because you have to, the species over here was, the population of it was severely affected, and the tribes were taking so much of effort to bring it back, and this was acknowledged by the Champions of Earth Award that was given by your UNEP. So this is the reason why this was also there previously. Again, this year also the tribes that have been managing this were, the strides that they have made were there in news. Just keep this in mind. Singchung Bugun, the area, the protected area, and the bird species is your Bugun leochila. The next species that we have to discuss is your golden tiger. If the black tiger was found in Simlipal, the golden tiger, which is a very rare color variant of the Bengal tiger, also known as tabby tigers or strawberry tigers because of its entire structure, which is a little bit more chubby. This was spotted in your Kaziranga National Park. Golden tiger falls under the critically endangered species of your tigers over there with very less population of it. So this was sighted in Kaziranga, and that was the news about it. The next thing that was there in news is your Ramghar Vishadhari Tiger Reserve was listed as the 52nd Tiger Reserve in India. It is in Rajasthan. It's also the home to the striped hyena, leopard, etc. Apart from Ramghar Vishadhari, Rajasthan also has tiger reserves of Ranthambore, Sariska and Mukundra. Okay, so again, the 52nd Tiger Reserve, that is obviously the current affair part of it. Again, I've told this even previously, when it comes to your protected areas, more than if it was a new Tiger Reserve or a new national park, I think if it has some more, details related to its past, it would be more important. So again, just keep this name in mind as a recent Tiger Reserve that was added, just in case they ask. The next thing that we have to discuss is quite important. It's something called as your Asiatic lion landscape. See, in India, now what has happened is we are focused on protecting the different species, but over the time, what has happened is instead of just protecting one species, we look at the entire land area where it occurs. And then we try to protect the land area. So this is the reason why for the protection of tigers, you have the Terai Arc landscape. You're going to protect the entire area, and then by virtue of protecting the entire area, those species also get protected. That's the idea. So similarly, now we are trying to incorporate that for the Asiatic lion. And then we've created a project called as your Asiatic lion landscape. So these are land use areas within the southwestern part of the Saurashtra region of Gujarat. It includes 5 protected areas: Gir National Park, Gir Wildlife Sanctuary, Pania Wildlife Sanctuary, Mityala Wildlife Sanctuary and the Girnar Wildlife Sanctuary. All of these sites are in India itself. It's unlike the terrayak landscape, it's not like a multinational initiative. And this is just in India. You would see that over in all of these areas globally, you have almost 700 lions that needs protection. And in the long run, India is now planning to elaborate that into the other countries also. But as of now, the Asiatic lion landscape involves these 5 protected areas in India. Another protected area that deserves a mention this year, because there was a detailed article on this particular tiger reserve, is your Palamau Tiger Reserve, which is there in Jharkhand. It's one of the first 9 tiger reserves that were created in the country at the inception of Project Tiger. But beyond this also, Palamau is important because it has the distinction of being the first ever sanctuary in the world where a tiger census was carried out as a pugmark count as early as 1932. So at that point, J.W. Nicholson was the forest officer in Palamau, and he had conducted this tiger census, which was one of the first in the world to be carried out as a pugmark count. I hope you know what the pugmark count is, to count the feet marks which are there. Okay, so this has, because of all of these information, Palamau was that article, it was all mentioned. So just keep a note of it. This tiger reserve is also the watershed areas of 3 important rivers, which is Koyal, Burha and Auranga. Okay, so that is an additional information, not very important, but remember this fact, okay, this tiger census fact. Another feature that deserves mention this year is a feature called as your cloud forests. Cloud forests are montane rainforest. Montane rainforest means the kind that occurs in mountainous region. It's the vegetation of tropical mountainous regions where there's heavy rainfall, persistent condensation. Here what happens is, here constantly the area is kind of wet. So the kind of forests that occur in such mountainous regions are called as your cloud forests. Again, it's only found in tropical areas with tall mountains. It's usually found in the tropics between your 23 degree north, 23 degree south. Here you can see that only 1% of the global woodlands are considered as cloud forest, and over the time from your 1900s there has been a continuous decline. Earlier it was 11%. From your 1970s onwards, because the mountainous regions are also getting a lot of degradation, what has happened is, and climate change is also affecting these regions, so there's a rapid decline of cloud forest. From 11%, they have gone up to just 1% of the global woodlands. So you can see these forests occur in India also. You have found in tropical areas with tall mountains, so you do see this forest in India. The reason why we discuss the cloud forest is also because there is something called as a cloud forest bond. It's a financial instrument where what happens is, so globally if you look at it, then count the number of countries that have cloud forest. Almost 25 countries of the world have these cloud forests. So now these 25 countries have launched something called as your CF25, which is an investment initiative to establish a collective of all 25 countries that have a high cloud forests. So what happens is, they will create certain economic instruments whereby which others can invest in the protection of this cloud forests. So it's a bond, which means someone can buy it and that money will be used for the cloud forest protection. Okay, so this is something that was there, and that is the reason why I had discussed your cloud forests also. The next site, it's not an Indian site, but I felt like, you should be aware of this. This is a site, the Chard Lake. This is a lake that has now undergone such shrinking that it is now quite non-existent. So previously, the Chard Lake involved countries like Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger and Chad. Okay, and it is one of those areas where you have high populations of the giraffe and ostrich, etc. Now when you look at this, you will see that right now what body had existed like this, now the presence of it is only this much. So this is one lake, and because there is a lot of importance given to Africa last year, so just have a pointer over here that this lake has undergone massive shrinking, and it involves countries of Chad, Niger, Nigeria and Cameroon. Now we move into the different organizations and initiatives that are all clubbed together. So it can be a global initiative, it can be an Indian initiative, it can be an Indian scheme, all of these things. So until now, I hope whatever is the protected area or the species that is discussed, these are the, see, I don't want you to be dumped with more and more information. Whatever is the prime most important thing is what we are discussing. Now as we go into the organizations and initiatives, the first thing I want to discuss with you is your Champions of Earth award. Every year it is, the discussion of it is important. This year India has not had any award being given for, from this perspective. The Champions of Earth award is given by UNEP. This year's theme was Beat Plastic Pollution. There was no Indian unit that got the award, but there was a Chinese initiative called as Blue Circle, where they used blockchain technology for environment protection. This is the reason I just wanted to share this with you. So this is a very new thing. We know blockchain technology when we study in science and tech, so they've used it for environment protection, and that has got the award. The next thing that I wanted to discuss with you was a method called as your eDNA method, or your environmental DNA method. This year in India, we have tried collecting the DNA of different species from your environmental premises. For example, the first time it was done was in Chilika Lake in Odisha. What they did is they went about and looked around the environment of the lake. They collected samples. It can be small samples of spores, hair, feces, anything from the body of animals. They collected, and they have stored this as the different genetic compounds that they have got from that area. So eDNA method is basically collection of nuclear or mitochondrial DNA. In any mammal's body, the animal's body, you will see the genetic content in the nucleus and in the mitochondria, and based on this, what has happened, they've collected this, it's released from the organism into the environment, and what happens, we can collect this and study about the species of this area. The eDNA method collection in India is overlooked by your LECONS. Okay, this is primarily the major body when it comes to collection of genetic resources, and they have looked into it, and they are the ones that have collected this eDNA from the Chilika Lake area. So eDNA, environmental DNA, collection of samples from the environment happened at Chilika. They're learning the species that are occurring over there. They don't directly even have to see the species, they just need the genetic samples. The next thing that we have to discuss is something called as the Seaweed strategy. Seaweed strategy provides recommendations as to how a specific biosphere reserve can work in a much better manner. If they are working in a good manner, how they'll be awarded, they'll be given like a prize for it, all of these things. So Seaweed strategy is something that was devised by UNESCO. Why UNESCO? Because UNESCO only devised the Man and Biosphere program. So the Seaweed strategy provides recommendations for developing effective biosphere reserves and for setting out conditions, for their proper functioning. This year, the Gulf of Mannar in India was awarded. Because of its good functioning, it was awarded under the Seaweed strategy, and that is why this was there, or this becomes important for us. The next thing that we have to discuss is something called as Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism is an initiative by your European Union. What they're trying to do over there is they're trying to put a fair price on the carbon emitted during the production of carbon intensive goods that are entering EU. which means anything that enters EU borders through your import, they already would have some benefits, etc., right? But now, if it's from a carbon-intensive industry means cement, iron, steel, aluminium, fertilizers, electricity, hydrogen, etc. So in any of these industries, if it's created from there, what happens is once it enters into EU, they will put a border tax sort of a thing. So that why? Because they do not want any products coming into EU to be from, or they want to use whatever that taxation money that they get, they want to use it for the decarbonization in EU. So when you want to import something into EU, you have to always ensure that it is not, or it is created out of green technology. Primary, EU does this so that there is cleaner industrial production in non-EU countries. Anyway, what is important for us is carbon border adjustment mechanism is related to European Union. Then coming into the project Cheetah, we already discussed that Gandhi Sagar was chosen as the second site. I just want to talk about the different other sites also that is going to be there. So the idea of project Cheetah is to bring back independent India's only extinct large mammal. Now again, understand it's the only extinct large mammal. There are other species which have been extinct, but the large mammal that got extinct is the cheetah. 50 cheetahs will be introduced into various national parks in 5 years under the project Cheetah, and the places that have been listed under this is Naura Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh, Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary again in Madhya Pradesh, Shaghar Bulge area in Rajasthan, and Mukundra Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan. So these are all the areas that have been listed as those sites for project Cheetah. So both Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan are involved in this cheetah rehab program. The next thing that I want to discuss is an Indian innovation which is there. It's called as Parivesh. Parivesh is actually a web-based workflow application. Whenever you want to apply for any new industry or etc., what happens is you have a set of different clearances that you have to get from Environment Ministry. So Parivesh tries to simplify this process, wherein if I'm giving a proposal and it will all be an online itself. So I'll know what all clearances I have to get from each level, from center, state and district, and I can also see at what stage my proposals are. So if I have given, so I know it has been signed by this person, it will go to the next office. So all of these workflow from currently who has the file, all of these things will be very visible through the Parivesh app. So Parivesh is basically an application to simplify the processes of environmental clearances that are needed for your Indian industries. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next program that we have to discuss, though I'm going to discuss this under environment, the first pointer you have to have in your mind is this is not managed by the Ministry of Environment. The reward program. The reward is basically rejuvenating watersheds. The next current affair that we have to discuss is something called as biotrig. When you hear this at present, you might think it's some trigonometry thing, but no. Biotrig is basically a very new waste management technology that employs pyrolysis, which is basically burning. But what happens is the waste is going to be sealed in an oxygen-free chamber, which means it's not going to be polluting in nature. So it's sealed in an oxygen-free chamber and it's heated above 400 degrees Celsius and it burns. At this point, it generates byproducts like your bio-oil, syngas, biochar, etc. All of which can be used for farming, for different other organic ventures. Okay, so this is a very efficient waste management tech where you can burn the waste but without oxygen. Because it's burned without oxygen, what happens? It becomes non-polluting in nature also, because there are no unwanted residues. Anything becomes pollutant when the burning of it becomes incomplete. So what happens is incomplete burning will leave out soot and black carbon and brown carbon, all of these things. But in the case of biotrig, what happens is you're not even using oxygen, you are using heat. That means you can hope for the complete combustion, or at least, only very negligible loss will be there. And because of this, what happens? The byproducts are bio-oil, syngas and bio. So this is the reason why what happens is you just have non-polluting byproducts from it. The next thing that we have to discuss is ethanol 100. So ethanol 100 is a type of alcohol fuel containing 100% ethanol by volume. So it's primarily derived from plant-based materials like corn, sugarcane, wheat, barley, switchgrass. Keep the names of these plants and things in mind, because previously UPSC has asked about all of these things. So there is corn, sugarcane, wheat, barley, switchgrass. These are all considered as high in your sugar content, and you can very readily produce ethanol from it. And this is the reason why they are preferred. So they have now created a fuel in this manner. Now obviously there is a drawback, in the sense that what happens is it has lower energy density, which means the energy that can be generated per volume of the fuel is less in comparison to normal petrol diesel sources. So again, now that is a cost that you will have to, or that is a that's a con that will have to be worked into if we are planning to use this as a proper transportation fuel. Another problem is ethanol or pure ethanol can be quite corrosive in nature, and it can actually damage these different engine components. So ethanol 100, though it's very eco-friendly and everything, it has its cons, and keep this in mind. Lower energy density and corrosive nature are the cons of it. The next thing that we have to discuss is about WCA, which is Wetland City Accreditation. Okay, so again it becomes important because under the Ramsar Convention, you have a setup called as your Wetland City Accreditation, which is actually a voluntary scheme that recognizes any urban and peri-urban areas which have taken exceptional steps to safeguard their urban wetlands. So you understand, when I'm saying Wetland City Accreditation, it's primarily for urban wetlands. It was established in 2015. And as per this program, in India, Indore, Bhopal and Udaipur have submitted their applications to be accredited as a wetland city. Okay, so again, what is important? Wetland City Accreditation, it's under the Ramsar Convention, and it's primarily for your urban wetlands. The next thing I wanted to discuss with you guys was the snow leopard assessment. So if I had to just put it into perspective, 2022 there was the tiger assessment. Currently, there is the Nilgiri tahr assessment going on. Snow leopard assessment happened in 2023. Tiger was in 2022. Snow leopard was in 2023. So the snow leopard assessment was the first ever population estimation of snow leopards in India, and it happened from the time period of 2019 to 23. Again, this is happening over several. You can see over here, it happened over a 4-year period, and in India it was supported by the Wildlife Institute of India and all the range states and 2 conservation partners, which was National Conservation Foundation and WWF India. They used several techniques for this, where you had your Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Programs Population Assessment, GSLEP, World Snow Leopard Initiative, that is your PAWS initiative. All of them had come together to do the assessment. So don't get confused with all of this. Globally, when you have to do a census, you will have certain methods given up by different organizations. So GSLEP, which is your Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program, and your PAWS initiative, which is Population Assessment of World Snow Leopards, both of them had given certain guidelines as to how the snow leopard has to be counted, and we followed those rules and we counted the snow leopard in a 4-year period. And some of the major takeaways in this is you have almost 700 approximate mature snow leopards in India. Globally, snow leopards are classified as vulnerable, and in India you have almost 700 in number. 60% of India's snow leopards are found in Ladakh region. Apart from India, snow leopards are also found. The northernmost extent is Russia, and then you have Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan. So all of these areas have your snow leopard population. The next important thing that I want to discuss with you is about a global mercury partnership. The global mercury partnership was created by UNEP. It was initiated in 2005. The idea is to effectively implement your Minamata Convention on Mercury, and the Minamata was signed in 2013, and 140 countries came up to sign it to reduce the use of mercury, production of mercury, and mercury related industries. Okay, now again, this globally mercury partnership in this year, they had conducted a meeting, and that is why that was there in news. But again, if you did not know, it's part of, or it's managed by UNEP. Another important current affair that I want to discuss with you is about an initiative called as World Restoration Flagships. Okay, the World Restoration Flagship is an initiative under UN, primarily coordinated by your UNEP and FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. Using this, they are trying to understand those areas and those landscapes which can be revived back, and they are both involved in it. So you can see there is FAO involved in it and there is UNEP involved in it, which means that you're trying to restore and revive certain land areas, and by virtue of doing it, the environment over there is benefited and the land area over there is also benefited. So in this manner, they've been looking at different projects that have been doing well in the restoration initiatives, and in this manner, this year, the Terai Arc Landscape Project was mentioned. There have been certain awards given to it for one of the most successful restoration programs that are happening in the world. Okay, so when you look at the global restoration flagships, from the Indian side, you have your Terai Arc Landscape. It's a program run by UNEP and FAO. Another term that I want to introduce you to is something called as e-soil. E-soil is actually a growth medium, wherein what happens is, say now for example, the roots and everything which is over there, what happens over here is very low power energy, waves are given, and what happens is it will electrically stimulate the root system and thereby increase the growth of the plant. Okay, so e-soil can be called as a kind of a growth substrate. Okay, it's not actually soil. Okay, it's a kind of a growth substrate through which electrical signals can pass and it can stimulate the root, and because the root is getting stimulated is why they've called it the soil. But ideally there is no soil or anything over there. It's just it can be minerals, whatever is there in that growth substrate. Through that the electric signals pass, it will reach to the root gets stimulated, and the root starts, or the growth hormones in the root gets stimulated, the root starts growing, subsequently the plant starts growing. Now it's important because it's environmental friendly, it's not using any unwanted, there's no additional machinery or anything involved in it. And on top of it, previously there was a lot of research going on in this manner, and they used to use very high voltage and non-biodegradable growth mediums, but e-soil uses biodegradable growth substrates, and that's why it is important. I've just included when it comes to COP28, which were the missions that India did not take part in, because I know on the whole you would have been flooded with all the other missions that India was part of, but the ones that India is not part of are very easy to remember, and there are only just 4 of it. So just keep that in mind. India is not part of the Alliance of Champions for Food Systems Transformation. India is not part of the COP28 Declaration on Climate and Health, Global Cooling Pledge, and Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships, the CHAMP Pledge. India is not part of these 4 initiatives. Okay, so rather than, I mean, if I were a student, this is what I would do. I would not remember all the initiatives that India was part of, because more or less India is part of all of the major initiatives. So the easier one is to remember the ones that India is not part of. So these 4 in the COP28, whatever missions were there, India is not part of these 4 initiatives. There was a national transit pass system that was introduced. It was very recently launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, where what happens is, through whenever you have to transit of forest produce across the country, you will give a one nation, one pass facility, so that any wood, bamboo, etc. that needs to pass through the country, if they are getting that transit pass, they will not have frequent checkings, there will not be delay in the movement. So National Transit Pass System is an initiative for the movement of forest produce across the country. The next thing I want to discuss with you is about an initiative called as your Green Urban Oasis. The Green Urban Oasis was launched in 2021 by FAO. What happens over here is FAO has an initiative called as your Green Cities Initiative. Okay, that was launched in 2020. Under the Green Cities Initiative is where your Green Urban Oasis was founded. What is Oasis? It's an area of growth. Okay, so here what they're trying to do is, they are looking at dryland cities and they're trying to reforest these areas, and they're trying to convert these urban areas, these cities, into a land where you have much more forest, much more vegetation, etc., thereby tackling the climate change. Now, why am I discussing this? I'm discussing this because it is actually an environment related mission, but it is run by FAO. Okay, and in India also you have identified certain cities which can be part of your Green Urban Oasis. So remember that it's an initiative by FAO to improve the resilience of dryland cities and to transform your cities into Green Urban Oasis. I hope you all are familiar with this initiative called as the Rhino Bond. The World Bank had incorporated this mission primarily for the protection of the black rhino species, which is seen in Africa, but it's an international bond itself, wherein what happens is you can actually invest in these conservation measures. You can invest in the conservation of the rhino, and you will get returns based on how much the rhino population has been conserved also. So it was launched by World Bank. It's a 5-year, 150 million sustainable development bond. It includes a potential performance payment, which means that if the rhino population has increased to a good level, the people who have invested in it will also get a payout. Anyway, I wanted to keep this in mind. This is not meant for any rhino population in India. This is meant for the black rhino population, which is severely critically endangered and is there in the African regions. It's not applicable for the Indian rhino population. The next initiative that I want to discuss with you is the Artificial Reef Program. Under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, we are now trying to create artificial reefs. okay, in certain coastal areas. It's implemented by the Fishery Survey of India and ICAR, which is your Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute. 60% of the funding of the program comes from the center and 40% from the state. What we are trying to do is, when you have in your coastal areas, you create different reefs. What happens is, or artificial reefs, it will also improve the fish population or the marine population over there. So this will improve the economy in the coastal areas. So this is the reason why it comes under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. Okay, so it's artificial reef creation, but it's not under the Ministry of Environment and Forest, it's under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. The next thing that I want to talk about is an ecological term which is there. It's called as Ecological Armageddon. Ecological Armageddon is used to describe the devastating decline of insect populations around the world. So, as you know, a large majority of the species that occurs in terrestrial landscapes belong to a family called as your Arthropoda, and that is primarily your insect population which is there. So here what has happened is, because of climate change and several subsequent factors, a large number of the insect populations are declining, and this has the potential to affect entire ecosystems, pollination, recycling of nutrients, etc. And the combined effect that is happening in this manner is called as Ecological Armageddon. Though it's called as ecological, it primarily deals with your insect population. The next thing I want to discuss is related to certain controversies that were there, but then we are just going to look at the legal side of it. Whenever you have the trophy of any wildlife or any kind of animal that is occurring in the wild, trophy in the sense that it can be as simple as the teeth or some part of the organism to the large bulky bodies, the stuffed bodies, etc. So what happens in a lot of these cases is you have in this year itself there was a lot of controversy in the ownership. Who can own these trophies, or can you own these trophies? So let's have a quick look at the legal provisions of it. Whenever or if ever you want to own any of these trophies, you have to get a ownership certificate that will be issued by the Chief Wildlife Warden of each state. Okay, so understand, anybody who has any of those huge heads or anything in these bungalows, you should have an ownership certificate for it. If it's not, it can very easily, the Chief Wildlife Warden or the Forest Department can come raid it, take it away, punish you as a criminal offense for holding on to it. Again, if you want to transport the said trophy from one area to another area, then also you will require the permission of the Chief Wildlife Warden. They say that the legal possession of an animal article is allowed only in these conditions, and even in these conditions, which I'm going to tell you right now, you have to have the certificate of ownership. So which means a person holding the custody of an article before the enactment of 1972 Act. Okay, maybe you've got it like some sort of an heirloom, maybe you've had it from a relative, someone has given it to you before the 1972 Act. If you've got it like that also, you have to take it to the Chief Wildlife Warden, get the ownership certificate from there, then only you can own it. Similarly, if the article is declared during the moratorium given by various state governments, there can be certain periods where the state governments have said like, okay, you are going and hunting these animals, you can keep it. In that case also, if you have acquired that article at that particular point, then later you should go and get the ownership certificate from the Chief Wildlife Warden to keep or possess that article that you have from the wildlife. So remember all of this. If a person inherited the article, holding custody before 1972 law, during the state moratoriums, in any of these cases, ownership certificate is a must, and that has to be given by the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state. Keep this point in mind. The next important current affair that I want to discuss with you is about the Methane Global Tracker Report. The Methane Global Tracker Report is given by the International Energy Agency, and based on what is the sense that 150 countries have joined something called as your Global Methane Pledge. So this report becomes very interesting because imagine this. So there's a global methane pledge. 150 countries have joined it, and they are trying to reduce methane emissions from human activity by 30% from the 2022 levels, and they are looking at 2030 as the limit. India has not signed this pledge. India has not signed this pledge. Okay, so again, this is the context of it. Here what happens is, so this year they've given a methane global tracker report. The IEA has released it, and they've said that, okay, yeah, which all countries are performing at what levels when it comes to the methane reductions, etc. And this is where the catch is, where India is not part of the pledge. India is not part of this report also. They measure only these 150 countries. So I hope that is clear. So dear students, with that, we are coming to an end of the most important current affairs of this particular year. Apart from that, if you're looking at current affairs from the previous years, your green credit program, your sovereign bonds for environment protection, all of these might be as important from the previous years. Apart from that, have a look at the state forest reports also. And this is it, because the most important current affairs of last 1 year have been discussed with you. I hope you've benefited from the session, and I hope you get questions from the session that equip you to solve it. If at all, we will have our, science and tech sessions also, but I go through all your comments in the environment sessions which are there. So if you've understood all the sessions taken for environment, please do mention it in the comments. Okay, and until we meet next time, take care and happy learning.